I just want to start off by saying thank you for doing what you're doing, and for Janky, and for Ian behind the scenes. Like, you guys, I feel like especially now more than ever, if you weren't doing what you're doing, so many artists would be, I think, a little bit
Yay
lost. Yeah,
for
big.
Janky and Ian.
And obviously Sarah Joe and everybody else behind the scenes.
I appreciate it. I mean,
That's great.
I'm glad it works out. Like, I don't know.
Anything different. That's what it's all about. And, you know, it sounds like it's working for you. So,
yeah. I always get frustrated with New York Comic Con anyway, because it's right after San Diego, and San Diego is the biggest show of the year. And there's just something about calling something a San Diego Comic Con exclusive. I think we have like 8 of your sets left, 7, I don't know, something like that. But if it was a San Diego Comic Con exclusive, like regardless of content, it would have been sold out.
right.
And I was kind of hoping that this show, New York was always half of San Diego. And we're already past the halfway point. I mean, we had a record-breaking San Diego. I mean, so we're already better than any New York we've ever had. But I really wanted the New York number to get closer to the San Diego number, and to prove that it's not the name San Diego. Who cares about if it's San Diego? Like, what's it going to be like when we have just our plain DKE Con in March? Like, no one's going to care. I'm just going to sit here and cry. Let's start with you. Can you just tell us who you are, what your name is, where you come from, what you do, how to follow you, all that kind of.
Yeah, Magoob Toys, Jamie, Magoob Toys on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't do the Facebook and Twitter thing so much. I think it's just kind of one of those necessary evils that, I mean, it's easy enough to reshare things on those platforms, but it seems like they kind of hit different demographics. And then, even interestingly enough, I post stuff on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, that first round of toys that I did, it really took off. You know, I got a couple of interviews out of that, and it totally hit a different market than I would probably normally have done. I've only been doing this really since I think I launched that set, these guys here, back in 2019 in January. That's when I put those out, and since then it's just been plowing along, trying to figure out, you know, what I want to do and how I want to do it. And, you know, I always knew that, you know, I wanted to do something, or do some kind of release with you, and just it was a matter of timing and figuring out that right thing that, you know, would probably resonate with the people that buy from DKE. So my day job is advertising. I'm an art director, graphic designer. I've been doing that for about 15 years. So I was a bit older when I got into that industry. I think I was in my early 30s when I started that career. And before that, that was 10 years of pumping gas at a gas station, managing that for about 10 years.
Congratulations on having a job and being able to eat.
Well, and that's the struggle, right? And I think, you know, interestingly enough, you know, listening to you talk yesterday, and, you know, I think you're saying that you're kind of risk adverse. And it's like, that's definitely the life that I lead. And it's like, unless I'm forced into a path or a direction, it's just like, I won't do it until I've figured out, you know, kind of all the ins and outs and the ups and downs of it. And, you know, doing these toys starting in 2019, that came out of being laid off. You know, I was at a job in advertising for about 9-10 years. And, you know, it came down to, you know, ultimately I wasn't happy there. I think the owner kind of saw that I wasn't happy there, and he's just like, you know, he set me free. And, you know, there was enough severance pay where it's like, okay, well, maybe I have a year to figure out, you know, will this work out for me? And, you know, there's no money in it for me anyways. I think every time I sell something, I'm probably losing money, but I think that's probably the same for a lot of people. It's like, you'd like to price things for, you know, what they're worth and the amount of time you put in. But, you know, if I were to add up the hours, it doesn't make sense. And I think part of that is on me of probably putting in too much time into the things that I do sometimes, or not getting to the solution quick enough, right?
Sure, but I also think, I mean, the same is an artist, true for an artist who, you know, puts a, they're just starting out and they have a piece of art in a gallery and it's $500, and the gallery takes half of that. They're left with $250 if it sells. And how many hours did they spend painting that? Like, yeah, it's like a minimum wage job, or worse. But there there is an upside. There's a goal ultimately, the hope and dream that will sell, it'll sell out, and that your prices will go up, and one day it'll be $1 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
And that was never the drive for me. I think it was more being in advertising for 15 years and thinking that that's going to be a good way to creatively, that release for me. And it was for a little bit. It was exciting. It's like, oh, I did that billboard, or I did that print ad, or that's my commercial, or, that novelty wears off pretty quick. And then, you're constantly struggling to find that other, it's kind of like being an addict. Like, what's that next thing? What's that next thing that's going to excite me? And doing, like sales ads for clients and that kind of thing just ultimately wasn't that rewarding. And it's like, there's the opportunities that come up, but I think what I learned, kind of halfway through, that 15 years was, okay, well, not to treat that like a job, like still be passionate about it, but, I need another creative release. So, doing toys and doing things outside of work, has always been what I've done, and nothing's really kind of manifested itself into maybe a business opportunity or something that can, turn into money. It's like I made soap for a bit, and did some shows where it's like I'm selling handmade soaps, and it's like, yeah, that was fun, got that out of my system. And it's like, what's next? And I'm always looking for that next thing. Seeing Slug Toys with his buttons, and it's like, buttons paid for half of my college. I got a button machine. I was making buttons for, buttons for the school and buttons for students. And, that kind of did its own thing. So I'm always kind of looking for that thing that I can kind of monetize somehow.
Nice. Can we talk about the supermarket series that you did?
Yeah.
Can you show that again? That's how I first met you.
Right.
You made a set of 12 of those.
Right. So I did the first 12 figures, gave them all, kind of generic names. And, like I think you said earlier, it's like, we won't talk about the grocery store chain or the brand here up here in Canada that
we don't have to name them, but I'd still like to hear the story.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of an iconic brand that they've been doing this for, for, I don't know, decades now. And, I kind of grew up, even with, limited funds, and, that's where I was doing my groceries. And it's like, where you can get, this generic branded food. And it was all still good stuff. I think it was all, premium. Okay, maybe not premium, but it was real food, but it was just, they didn't do any marketing.
Quite often those plain brand products are actually made by the same, the market chain. Like you go to Costco out here and you want to buy Costco batteries. I mean, they pay Duracell to make them. Right. Just and they're cheaper because they don't say Duracell on them. I don't know how that fits into Duracell's model, but a lot of these companies, a lot of the plain brand stuff is the national brand. Just
right. Yeah. So I mean, there was that appeal to it. There was the aesthetic appeal. So being an art director and a graphic designer, there was something beautiful and simple about about their packaging and that system that they kind of developed to to market those things. So there was that last agency that I was at, there was one of those grocery stores right across the street, and that was my daily go-to for lunch, or for things to pick up before I came home. And I don't know, I think kind of in 2018 I was starting to notice like psychedelic. One of the first toys I have is the Gay Empire Trooper. I was just like, this is fantastic. I didn't really know the story behind it. I didn't really know that there was a scene around this, and that people could do it. And I had done resin casting probably 10 years before that, but I didn't connect those two things together. So as I started to go to shows, and there was a punk rock flea market here, and I saw Toxic Fumes and Angry Beast and Lab Monkey, started talking to those guys and seeing what they were doing. I'm just like, man, this is fantastic. Like there's opportunity, there's creative outlet here. So my love of Star Wars, and then that familiarity of that brand, putting those two things together. Like you said, it was the first set of 12 figures. I did an edition of 8 each, so that was 96 carded figures that I put out, which was ambitious as heck, maybe as the first release, but it got a good response, and the carded figures actually sold out. So then I also had probably another couple hundred cast figures, because I cast in bulk. If I'm already casting, then I might as well just keep pouring the resin. So what do I do with those other figures? People had characters that they couldn't pick up anymore because I didn't have the carded ones. So I started doing little baggy versions of them. And it was that time that the grocery chain lawyers found me and sent me a cease and desist.
Did you really think that they weren't going to notice and come after you?
I didn't think they would. And here's my theory about that, and it's unproven still, is I know people that work at the agency that have them as a client.
Mm-hmm.
And the brand itself, that grocery store chain, have moved away from that look, and they were using real photography on their packaging. They started to move to different colors. And I feel like, and this is unproven, but somebody at that agency, because I'd worked with them at some point, had seen what I was doing, and were like, let's bring this nostalgia back. Let's bring this heritage brand back. And it might have made it into a pitch deck. And they said, yeah, let's revive this thing that we kind of walked away from. And I feel it was because the Toronto market was flooded. There were complete subway station takeovers. There were billboards that, just like streets were covered with this stuff. And I think they'd seen what I was doing, and, we can't have your stuff in the market while we're doing stuff, and, shut it down. And I was already done at that point anyways.
Did you respond and communicate with them, or did you just stop?
Oh no, I was challenging them along the way, like, let me know what I'm infringing on, yellow and black, because I've seen so many brands. There's traffic signs that are yellow and black, and I got them to kind of commit to. It was really came down to this horizontal and vertical line at the bottom of the packaging, and where they kind of put their weights and measurements and some details. They kind of pinpointed it down to that. But I'd already had all the card backs, or the header cards, printed for those baggies.
So are you having, at this point, are you having phone conversations or just email back and forth? Is this through lawyers? How is this communication happening?
This is through their IP lawyer.
And how are they communicating with you?
So I had to look up a bunch of things. So, when you start an email with no, what was the term? Basically saying what they were saying in the email wouldn't hold up in court. Like they won't ever use it, or I couldn't use it in court. So with no, I can't remember the terminology, but they'd asked me to stop, and I asked them, like, what am I infringing on specifically? They said, get my own lawyer to figure that out. I'd asked them if it was because they hated George Lucas, they hated the new movies, they hated Star Wars, like, just to, I don't know if it was a bit of banter back and forth. And anyways, I had taken that original cease and desist letter and used that on my new packaging. So I reprinted my cards with that letter on top, so that bypassed, it wasn't infringing on their IP anymore. And I talked to them kind of a little bit after that, and yeah, their legal office was not impressed that I'd used that letter in some kind of packaging, but do what you can.
Wow. Because over here in the States, what I've noticed is when you get a lawyer, like, they don't really want to talk to you. They send you like a threatening letter, and then I think I've only ever received one, and I spoke to a lawyer, and he didn't want to take me on as a client. He just kind of coached me or a couple sentences to reply back, and which I did, and they kind of just went away. And I recognized that that I should not have carried that toy.
Right.
That it didn't need the name of the property in the name, and it wasn't a parody, and it wasn't and the toy was just too good, and it looked like a licensed toy, and it was a mistake, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have spotted it, right away, and encouraged the artist just to change the name, and it would have been fine. And it was a small company, and it's kind of worse for the smaller companies. They have a lot to lose, where like the Disneys and Lucasfilms, they don't really have much to lose. But I think it's interesting that you actually were able to have a conversation. You asked them, so what exactly is infringing about this? And then they told you to go get your own lawyer to explain it to you.
Well, and then I think it was either before that or after that, because I had one from Smooth On as well. And people that are casting and making toys, that's the silicone and the resin we're using. And they had sent me one because I had done a logo. It was the Smooth On logo, but it said Bootleggers. And it was their web developer or somebody random that sent me an email. Again, it was a bit of a back and forth, and I was just like, it was a parody, like, I love your product, I know everybody's using your product, so it was, there's no malintention kind of, in doing it. And eventually I talked them into sending me some t-shirts and hats. So, and it was garbage. It was horrible.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
it's such a weird, I guess, I don't want to get too much into the legal aspects of things, but here in the States, like, supposedly, political speech is protected, and you're an artist making a signed and numbered limited edition, and it's a parody, and it is making potentially a political statement. Like, I don't know that an American grocery store chain would do that for. Sometimes I think that some of these lawyers, they don't know they don't bother to read. They just see the yellow and black, and they're like, oh, I'm going to bill my client and send and then when you force them to look deeper, it's like, how many did you make? Right. Oh, you signed this? Oh, this is a piece of art? Oh, because they don't recognize it as a piece of art. Like, they have to kind of be educated. They look at it, they think it's a toy, and they think you're making 10,000 of them.
Right. I don't think it would have ever gone to court. There was another case with that same brand, and somebody was doing t-shirts. There was this chain is so popular that in certain communities in the city, there's full Facebook or Instagram accounts for that location. And there was a location that was shutting down, or it was kind of popular, and somebody had done shirts and they got a cease and desist. So I don't think it would have ever gone to court. Like, I think the public, the perception of that company, and because they've already been in the news for fixing the price of bread, so there's that. They don't. It's a thing, and they did it, and they admitted it. And I think from public perception, I don't think they wanted. I don't think they would take people to court. I think they try to scare people, and
right. It's cheaper to scare people. You pay a lawyer to write one letter, kind of does most of the work for them.
Right.
I guess I would appreciate if people handled stuff a little differently. But okay, so speaking about infringement, let's talk about DKE Con logos.
And here's the thing, I wasn't going to share those with you beforehand. I was going to actually have, I think, probably wear all 3 shirts and slowly pull them off as we're talking. I wasn't sure how that was going to go, so I wanted to bring you in on it. And
thanks.
I appreciate how you handled it. It was.
How did I handle it?
Very well.
Oh yeah.
I know you like to play it off like you're tough on me, but you weren't. I think you're a little, tickled that I had done. And I think honestly, you need some branding. Like, I think you've kind of had the same kind of stenciled, DKE logo for quite a while, and
I mean, I did that on purpose, because being a distributor for all those years, a lot of people would take would list their items and they would forget about the artist or the actual creator or company or firm that made the toy, and they would call it DKE branded toys. And to this day, if you go on Amazon, you type in DKE, you can see some of the old tags where someone just totally forgot who the artist was. And the same thing is true today. Like we sold a bunch of toys to a company called Polyphony in China, who did a huge, you know, exhibition recently at I think it was in Shanghai. It was Wonderfest, something like that. And I was just, you know, just trying to explain, like, you're selling art, right? Please don't call this DKE. Like they needed to use the DKE name to make sure that the customers in China knew that these weren't, you know, knockoffs. Right. So, you know, we posted on our Instagram and our blog and everywhere, and did an interview and did all that so they could show that, hey, this was actually, I don't know what they called it or how they did it, but it was very important to them that the DKE name be used, and that was fine. You know, if people say curated by DKE or something like that, but the fear always was that people would look at just all the designer toys, especially the vinyl and stuff, and say, oh, look at all this DKE branded stuff. And it's like, whoa, you know, not responsible for the content. Like I just, you know, I'm just a middleman.
You're
so
the curator. Yeah, totally understood. And yeah,
but that wasn't even curated then. That was, you know,
okay.
our business model was not like pick and choose. We were open to anyone who was independently minded that was making stuff for this market, right? So people say, how do you choose your stuff? It's like, I don't. Like, if you come to me and you say, I have a toy, I want it to be in Target and Walmart and Toys R Us and Sears, or, you know, whatever, some big box store, then I'm not the place to go. But if you want to build a grassroots following, you want it in independent, you know, toy stores, comic shops, bookstores, record stores, skate shops, graffiti supply, like you just name, like we sold to, I think, a bakery and a flower shop, and like anyone who wants a box of knickknacks at the register, you name it. And the weirder the store, the better. We sold to like weed dispensaries, and once I had a list. It was a cupcake store, and it was a prop house, and I don't know.
So do you like the logos or what? Holy shit.
Yeah, the logo, hashtag Dove Tangent. The logos were fun, and I went and I bought a bunch of stickers on Threadless, but I thought that was funny that but then we kind of unbeknownst to me, Janky made the graphics for the show here, and then he stole your logos that you stole from us. So
yep. No, it's
there
perfect.
You go.
It's the circle of life right there. It's all good. And that's the thing that I, back to doing the toys and those creative outlets. Like I have folders and folders on my laptop of just ideas. And, if I'm not making a toy, it's, what kind of brand can I riff off of? And I think sometimes that kind of leads to an idea. So, I had no intention of doing anything for, making a toy, never mind for DKE. But doing the logos, then it's just like, when I started looking at NYCC in San Diego, it's like they all have branding. There's something there. So I felt like we needed something. So I actually went to the New York Comic Con, I think I mentioned to you, and it was last year's, I guess. And they had done enamel pins of Run DMC and Beastie Boys, like New York artists. And then we were talking about there was the AC/DC one, which is a weird one. But I'm like, fuck, I'll steal what they're doing and do it for Dove for this year. So.
Nice. All right, so let's talk about these.
Well, here's the thing. So you've seen that. There's a huge toy collector that had seen that series, and they had requested something a bit different. So they asked for a 15-inch.
Holy crap! What?
So here's a 15-inch Chewbacca.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who requested that?
You, probably after this call.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
So
if you make it, you will buy it.
Can you talk about this process here?
Yeah, so honestly, so coming out of these guys where it was super clean aesthetic and, very minimalistic. And I've done other toys, since then, in the past year. But to make another big release, I kind of wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted to, kind of let loose of the control of, what the end piece is going to look like, and not settle for something that's mediocre. I think, kind of watching your interview with Mark Todd from San Diego, and I think you both kind of acknowledge there's a challenge and a skill. I'm not saying that I have that because I struggle at it, but to kind of revert back to a childhood kind of playfulness with your coloring or your art and things like that. I think as you kind of get older, it's like everything has to be within the lines, everything has to be controlled. So the challenge is if I can do a perfect reproduction of that figure, what could I do to do something a little bit more interesting? So taking the 3 3/4 inch figures and doing a super low resolution scan, a 3D scan of them. I've been 3D scanning for quite a bit using some different technologies, and I have a handful of 3D printers. It never connected to me or with me that maybe I should do a release like that. So doing the scan of that guy, and getting something that's kind of in that world, and then doing that paint job, and just like, again, not that I wasn't caring about the outcome. There was still a lot of stress and do-overs. I think if I look back at the folder of that project, it goes probably 6-7 months back of when I started just finding on Google some kid scribbles and just putting it on top of an old Star Wars card back. And
Sure.
knowing that there was probably something there.
And so from the digital output, you made a mold. Did you hand paint all of these?
Yes. Yeah,
but did you cast them in the base color of the figure?
No, they're all cast in white.
Got it. So it's the white of the Stormtrooper. Did you paint on top of that?
I did. Yeah, so that was probably primed in a solid white or painted in a solid white, and then still, like, every one of them still has a base coat of paint. So even though the Stormtrooper is predominantly white, he still had to be painted and primed just for the paint to hold on that resin.
Because there's something about the paint job that is very hard to tell that it's been painted. It looks almost like it. Have you ever seen any of the color 3D printing?
Yeah.
It looks almost color 3D printed. Like, you don't see a brush stroke. You really, the lines, like when you said in the piece where you said it was painted with a 27% accuracy, was that just a joke?
No, I tried to really go as quickly as I could. I tried to look at the figures, and I know the Stormtrooper was going to be the biggest challenge for me, just because it had so little detail. So it's like, what can I do to it? So doing the base coat of white, doing the black on top, and then hitting it with a almost like a yellowing overcoat to give it a little bit of that vintage feel. So in the creases and the recesses, there's a little bit of tone there as well. But honestly, I thought the painting was probably going to take me longer than it would. But when I kind of set them all up and just went, color after color and just hit them, and even the Stormtrooper, I couldn't do all the black in one shot, right? Like the way that I'm holding it, or the front side or the back side, because I'm laying them all back down on the table, I had to kind of figure out, kind of the order of processes. So. Yeah, I'm happy with the way that they turned out, and I'm hoping they do well, because I'd like to do that next set. And
I think they're fantastic, and I can always tell, like, I can always tell when something is like really successful, and it has a lot to do with how many other artists in the scene who are just jaded as hell, and or try not to collect anything and don't want other people's stuff, and then they're like, I think I kind of have to have that. And I see that a lot with this toy over and over again. And even Buzzard Guts was on the other day. He just came on the show, and he's like, oh yeah, you can tell he's like, he kind of doesn't want to spend money, but he's like, kind of have to have that. Yeah, that's really cool. And I show him the close up. He's like, that's good.
Oh man, that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I don't know, like, and this isn't a commentary on toy makers at all. And it's like there's some people that will make toys, you know, that other people want,
Mhm.
and you know, that's completely, you know, I'm totally down with that. And then there's stuff that, you know, I think some toy makers they do exclusively for themselves, whether it's a one-off or a small run. And I kind of want to fit somewhere in the middle, you know. I want to do the stuff that I really like, but if I'm going to do it, I'm probably going to run 100 of them, right? Like I want other people to appreciate it. So, you know, I think we had a few conversations kind of leading up to this, and just like I'm struggling with it. Like, is this something that people are going to gravitate towards? You know, it's like you have an opinion, but again, that's an opinion of one. That's, you know,
Sure.
that's not a cross section of what people are looking for. So
No, I like weird shit. So I'm jaded, and so I see. If you watch the interview I did with Steve Sansweet, who's got the largest Star Wars collection in the world, I talk about when I went over to his house over the years, and he had, and I was just into like these straight interpretations, wanted to get my Kenner figures and these, you know, and I collected art at the time, but he had this wood AT-AT, and he's got it in his book. Someone made it. It's like a piece of folk art. Someone did the best that they could. They made it for their kid, whatever, for whatever reason. And I would hear him take the people on the tours, and he would point to that, and he's like, this is my favorite piece. It's amazing. And I looked at it and I was like, that's a piece of shit.
yeah,
Like, I don't want that. And it really took me quite a while to come around to realize, you know, it's like if you look at these Albert Reyes pieces, right? You know, I've seen the drawings that he does. The cover of his zine, he's got like an Anthony Bourdain sketch that he did. I mean, it's like photorealistic. Like it's like,
yeah.
right.
And I think I'm in the same camp. I was listening to you the other day, and you're talking about Galoob, and you know, for me, if it wasn't Kenner, and I'm talking about Star Wars, if it wasn't Kenner, I didn't want any part of it. And you're talking about the micro machines, and it's like I cringed at that shit, you know. But now, like this is the stuff. So there's a flea market, an outdoor flea market that happens outside the city. And one of my favorite booths, the guy just has Rubbermaid bins everywhere and just toys piled in. He doesn't organize it. He's got a store somewhere where it's probably more curated. But the great thing with that place is you're digging through bins and you're breaking stuff as you're digging through it. Like there's nothing is surviving. There's legs and arms everywhere. But I came across this last year, this handmade DL44 that somebody's dad or somebody's grandfather, you know, probably went into the barn or the shop downstairs, you know, and cobbled together bits of metal. And, you know, it, even on this thing here, you know, they engraved Millennium Falcon. Like I got that for $50, and this was like the best thing I've ever bought.
Right.
You know, and I show other people and they're like, yeah, you fucking overpaid for that thing. Dude, you couldn't remake this for $50. Like you couldn't get the wood and the parts and the time to put that thing together. So that's the world that I'm in right now. Is, you know, what are you know, and I kind of asked you the other day too, is like, where's this toy thing going? Where's, you know, this artist scene going? And, you know, I some more experimentation. I would love to see, you know, like I think, you know, sculpting can get to a certain level, and then, you know, 3D printing and 3D modeling can get to a certain level. And it's like, where else can we go with this? So,
well, I mean, right now it's going in every which direction. And, you know, the beauty of the scene is now that there's several hundred people making stuff, is when you look at people's work, you can kind of recognize it. Because like I always tell people, when it started out, when it was just the Suck Lord, and then Killer Bootlegs came on the scene, people hated him. They're like, you're a Suck Lord ripoff, right? Doesn't matter that his aesthetic is completely divergent and that everyone else after has had their own style. There've been people who've been criticized for their work looking too much like the Sucklord if they did their design work or whatever. But I don't know. It's like the more people that make stuff, what I found, the more people that make stuff, the more people are coming to the scene because
Right.
there's it's it's something Frank Kozik told me. You know, he was at a point where people could say that he was just kind of like overexposed, right? He was just kept making stuff and making stuff and making stuff, and he just told me, he says, the more I make, the more I sell. And it's a different attitude. You know, there's other people, there's like the cause model where it's like going to make everything limited and very expensive and very exclusive and, you know, be kind of snotty about it. And that's one way of doing it. And it happened to work for him and, you know, good for him. But Kozik's attitude was, even just in the method of distribution, because he was selling toys himself, he would do anything for 10% of the run. So people were like, hey, will you design this toy or will you do a colorway of my toy? Sure. How much do you want? 10% of the run. So you make 500, you give him 50. Consequently, how he personally benefited is that that meant there was something Frank Kozik in every store we ever sold to, right? And because other artists, the Tim Biscups, the Joe Ledbetters, they were doing their own retail. And, you know, good on them. They wanted to make as much money as possible. And if they needed to do that, they needed to do that. But they were just kept small editions, continually selling out. Very few people able to get the work. And then when you walked into a store, their stuff's nowhere to be found.
Right.
But you walked into a store, there was Kozik stuff on every shelf. So, you know, a marketing director or someone making a commercial walks in there, is like, they don't know the difference. They don't know that this is a toy that won't sell. It's been sitting there for 6 months, right? They're like, holy shit, this Kozik guy, he's blowing up. And the benefit was that he would get these design jobs, like Slim Jim would call and pay him 50 grand to redesign this. This person, you know, paid him to do a commercial, and this person paid him to direct this. And this, you know, it's like just from having toys on the shelf.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the dream. I think it was even I think it was Ron English. I don't know who did the interview, but you know, you have the stuff that's at retail, and you know, the stuff that you're just churning out in factories, and you know, you're probably just putting a signature on a sketch at some point, and stuff is being produced. But then they have their whole other side of their life where they're still artists. They're doing their own thing. They're doing the thing that still excites them. Not that you know, getting that paycheck or that royalty or that 10% or any of that, you know, isn't exciting stuff. But you know, that doesn't define them as a person. So it's like, yeah, you know, bear bricks and smoking rabbits and all that stuff. And it's just like, I'm so sick of that stuff. And like, but there's a market for it. You know, there's people that are going to be buying it, and that doesn't define who that artist is, because I guarantee you, they're in their studio doing something completely different than putting a cigarette in a rabbit's mouth. Like that's not who they are. And I think, you know, people that are buying the toys, you know, need to not necessarily be aware of that too, but you know, I try not to pass judgment on, the people that collect Funkos or the people that collect, the Target toys or any of that stuff. And it's just like, whatever excites you, you know, like, I think at some point we've all kind of been in that world of, you know, you need the factory made stuff, we need the handmade stuff, we need, like, you know, where does it take you? And as long as it's making you feel something, then it's all good, and, you know, should be supporting it all, you know.
I mean, it's a progression. I mean, people start somewhere, and most people don't start out with this. This is not where people, there are some people who come from art and then appreciate it and come in from that perspective. But most of the people collecting have done action figures and then found it to be a soulless experience, and then wanted something deeper and something to connect with that wasn't just a company trying to churn out as much stuff as possible. But in Ron English's case, as far as I can tell, he only cares about selling paintings.
Right.
And it's that $10,000 or $20,000 painting that matters. And he loves having the toys so he can set them up and then paint them. Right. So when someone comes to him and says, hey, I want to make a toy of this, he's like, awesome. I'm going to have more toys to paint to make, that's not the toys that are making the money, as far as I understand it. So,
yep. So that's the dream, Dove. That's where I want to be.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. Fuck.
Uh,
I'm just happy to be here.
Look, it's not a bad dream to have. You know, any kind of, you know, independence that you can achieve, you know, through your own means of making your own work, whatever that path is, where it's the Kozik or the Ron English or the Cause, like however, I mean, Cause is very, as far as I can tell, I don't know the guy, I never talked to him, not that he would ever talk to me, but it seems very calculated. And from everyone that I know that knows him, like it's just like, I'm going to paint in the streets for 5 years. I'm going to build up my street cred, and then I'm going to release this, and then I'm going to go to the gallery. And maybe it's just a legend, I don't know, but it seems to have worked.
Mhm.
Right now,
And I totally love and I appreciate people, because I don't think that way. I'm so about today and not even tomorrow, that I don't. It's never been part of my DNA. So when I see people like that and they have that plan, and they know that 5-year, 10-year, 15-year progression, there's something interesting about it. And it's like, I don't know if it's right for me, so I'm doing it the way that I know how to do it. But you always kind of look at those success stories. You look at the Killer bootlegs, and the success that he has with the Draco and the Phantom Star Killers. Like, fuck, like that's a great deal. Like from the outside, it looks like a great deal. Like, they crank out half a dozen of those a year, and they do well. It's like, does that let him focus on his his family and his other creative passions? Hopefully, hopefully that worked out for everyone. But
I mean, I'm not at liberty to say, but you can do the math. If you're selling 1,000 of a $18 toy, what the royalty would be, and it's nice passive income.
Right.
It's wonderful to have royalties come in on stuff that don't necessarily equate to like your blood, sweat, and tears, and sweat off your brow kind of thing. But it can make you a little more comfortable. But he's not retiring.
No, I think it's letting you focus on other things, and ultimately, that's kind of the position that I think we all look to be in on some level or another. The day job that I have, financially supports me, and creatively it checks some boxes, and from a social aspect, it lets me kind of talk to other people and do my daily Zoom calls with them.
Sure.
But from a pure creativity standpoint, where it's like, I'm my own boss and I get to decide what I'm going to make that day, it doesn't necessarily do that for me. So that's why I turn to this, and probably a lot of other people.
Well, a lot of it is trying to find that balance.
Right.
And it sounds like you, more than most people that I talk to, are actually in a really positive place with it. And the work that you're doing now is actually fulfilling the need that you kind of set out to have it fulfill. Whereas like, I cited even like the Sucklord, like, when he would say to me, like, when's it going to happen? Like, what's it?
I think it's happened, hasn't it happened?
That's what I told him. It's like, when is, he wants to know when the big paycheck comes, and where are the chicks and the drugs and like the payday. And I'm like, no, dude, this is the dream. Like, you're living it right now. You're supporting yourself. You're paying your rent. You do what you want. Like,
you have people making copies of your toys, or their tributes to the Sucklord, like that.
Right.
Like, who doesn't want that, And
he just, I asked him, because it normally would give him like 10% of the run. And so if this person's going to, want to make, Edwin Salas made 20 pieces, I say, like, you have to make 2 for the Sucklord, give him his little cut. And he's just like, sell it. Just send me the money. I don't care.
And that's a good place to be too. I mean, you can't get married to your stuff, right? Like, what's he going to do with a couple of toys?
Nothing. If people give him toys, he puts them in a box and he sends them to me. So
I have a box over here as well. I need to figure out how to make my $200 back off that box.
Excellent, dude. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. For anyone watching, we just have the set of 4 Space Warps here. It's a matching number set out of 20. It's really affordably priced at $180 for all 4. And you also, I didn't really announce this, but if you buy a set, you have first right of refusal on set 2. So we're writing down the numbers of who gets what numbers, and you will be contacted if set 2 comes out. And if you want it, you can buy it.
Yeah, set 2 is in production, and like I said, I'm getting ready to get started on that. So it's not like you're buying into 4 figures that the series is done, and after that 4, it's done. I'm not going to be doing 21 space warps or 50 space warps. I think that's it's going to be those top 8 figures, and yeah, those guys right there. If you can guess what those bottom 4 are, then those are 4 of the other characters in that movie.
And if you can't guess what they are, then too bad.
Yeah, you'll see in a few months.
All right, thank you, dude.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
You as well. Bye.
Take care.